This episode was co-produced with Stiftung, which makes science effective by initiating impact-oriented innovation projects. This year, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary and are keen to highlight the impact their initial funding has had on Swiss entrepreneurs.
Luya is not a protein-heavy product, but it contains some protein and it contains what you need, and it also contains a very full amino acid profile, so everything you need.
Welcome to the Swisspreneur Show, a podcast about startup stories and learnings from experienced entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Sylvan.
Toby, very well welcome to the Swisspreneur Show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Sylvan. It's an honor to be here, and I'm quite interesting to see how this goes.
We are very excited. You're the co-founder at Luya, a food tech startup creating deliciously sustainable vegan alternatives to meat. Before we talk about your company, I actually want to start with your personal background. You finished your master's at ETH, and then you became a research assistant at the Berner Fachhochschule, BFH. What was and is your main area of research?
So I exactly as you said, I finished my master's at ETH, and then looking for a job, I came across the team at the Berner Fachhochschule that I joined. And I really joined there to basically acquire a new research project and really initiate a lot of different new initiatives. Mm-hmm. I focused initially a lot on food 3D printing, which is, it's an interesting concept. I think there are some cool applications and things that can be done with it. Commercial viability maybe is a different story, but actually also through food 3D printing, we really also started to look at a lot more materials that are available, and through this kind of slipped into the side stream topic. So all the industrial food products that have no use, so to say. And then quickly also came across the fungal fermentation, which is what we at Luya do today. So it's a traditional fermentation style that's known possibly to some foodies for tempeh production, but other than that, it doesn't have a huge application in at least in Europe. So we quickly became interested in that and the combination of the two.
And that is then quite a shift, right? Because researching is significantly different from setting up and running your own company. When did you suddenly then feel the need for a change to slightly leave research and focus more on the business side?
Yeah, it's definitely something very, very different, and we had to learn. So I think it happened in a way pretty early on. So I initiated this research, and then it was handed over, or we launched a project with which Mike, who is one of my co-founders, did in his master's thesis, and pretty early during his thesis, we were sitting there looking at products, tasting products, and we're like, this is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. And it's super interesting. And I think we then, it was the question, how far can we push this? And I guess there's, of course, the option to push it through a commercial partner that is existing and established. But I think the interesting thing, or the big challenge, was to do it ourselves.
And that initial decision, to go basically all in and say, hey, we do start our own company and want to make this not only a good research, but actually also a commercially viable product. Was there anything that helped you to make that decision? Any client interest or purchase orders or anything of that sort that helped you to push to go all in and really start the company?
Yeah, I think initially, to push this from, let's say, basic research to more tailored research towards driving the company, I think there was the grant that we received right from Stiftung, which really was also aimed at developing a business case out of your research. So we started there, and then the people that we gave it to tasting, everybody was quite happy and was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah. And then in a later stage, we definitely also started doing trialing rounds, so really tasting the product with consumers, but also with gastronomy, so chefs, and really also improving the product. What do you think? What could we do? And essentially, yes, the necessity to found a company came from there. So as soon as somebody wants to place an order, selling food, you need somehow to have a business that actually sells this food. So then we very quickly needed to found a company to be able to sell something.
Yeah. I like that. From positive feedback until the first order request, basically, that was the timeline to start your own company.
Definitely, yeah. It was really, it then started, bouncing feedback back and forth until somebody said, well, okay, now it's actually pretty good, can I buy it? And there's like, oh, actually, yes, it's a good idea. But, we need quantity, we need the setup to actually do all of this.
Right. And you founded Luya, the legal company, in 2021. You have 2 co-founders, Mike and Flavio. So how did you 3 meet together?
Yeah, so exactly. I think the first person I of course met was Mike. So he's he's our chef and kind of culinary person. So he has a background as a chef originally. So he's from Scotland and then worked many years in kitchens and then switched and did a bachelor's in his late 20s and worked as a product developer in a large company producing retail food. And when he moved to Switzerland, initially he decided to do a master's to get his footing here, and we met at the Berner Fachhochschule. So that was definitely his master's thesis was where we started working together, and this kind of then was a fruitful collaboration. And then during the GRS or the Gebertrüff project, actually we met Flavio through I would say at the end a coincidence. So Flavio really came from a different background, right? His life is based in consulting and banking, and he decided to quit this, and he then started looking at, okay, what comes next? I guess COVID didn't really help his exploring phase. But anyway, his passion for food and fermentation and sustainability kind of pushed him to explore this, which of course with his background and no lab infrastructure is very difficult to do. So he contacted Swiss Food Research, so an organization in Switzerland that really is focused on pushing food research to get some funding to help. Swiss Food Research directed him to us because they kind of saw, okay, look, these guys are doing something similar. Maybe they're lacking a bit of business expertise in their foodie team and research team. And Flavio, of course, is lacking a bit of a foodie or at least food research capacity. So they were the matchmakers. We met for a beer and then another, and then we exchanged, and somehow it really got this dynamic of starting to work together, really fine-tuning the business plan and starting to develop more the business case surrounding what was really essentially a research project before.
Right.
So I think that meeting really then also pushed the whole business development and pushed us in the direction where we are today.
Amazing. And despite having the complementary skill set that makes you a strong team, were you also, eating plant-based food before? Is that also something that unites the 3 of you out of a personal take, basically?
I think there's within the founding team and all of Luya, there's a lot of different types of eating. I think we're definitely joined by a fascination for food, a fascination for plant-based products, for new products, for everything. I think there are some people that are completely vegan. Then there's probably a very large fraction that is 80% vegan, but occasionally eats cheese, meat, whatever. Yeah. But there's definitely this sustainability and kind of realization that our food system definitely has a lot of gaps that need filling. I think that's what really brought the team together and still does.
Amazing. You're on a joint mission right there.
Definitely a joint mission.
One thing I'm also interested is the name of your company, Luya, is, it's a very nice name people can remember it. It's very thoughtful, but there's a backstory to it. Can you quickly share where the name comes from? Yeah,
there's definitely a backstory to it. I guess the first backstory is, it's in the research, you give research project titles that are often not thought out to be nice names. So at one point we were, okay, we need a company name, we need a product name, we need something that's appealing, short, exactly everything that you described. And it was a long mission.
I can imagine.
A lot of brainstorming. And so Luya actually, at the end of the day, what really brought us to this name, or what really resonates for us, is the fact Luya is a tributary river. So in East Africa, in Zimbabwe, there is the Zambezi River, and Luya is one of its tributaries. And in English, maybe the wordplay doesn't work as nicely, but the tributary rivers, essentially what they are side streams of the main river. And side streams, right, is kind of where Luya is based. So really this processing of side streams from industrial food production. So side streams are all the streams that are not the main, right? So,
yeah.
And what Luya is based around is the side stream of the soy milk or tofu production. So when you produce soy milk or tofu, actually you have a side stream and you produce a lot of okara, which is our main ingredient. So that there's the side stream, and also really anchoring this in the company name, this mission-driven purpose to know we want to make use of side stream and make side streams the mainstream.
I love that story. I think that is so thoughtful and meaningful at the same time. So great job on that one.
Took us some time.
I can imagine. It looks easy from the outside. So, when we look at the market, of course, it's a very crowded market where you are playing in. But the problem with current meat alternatives is often that they have a lot of harmful ingredients that, you think, oh, I don't eat meat, I eat something healthy, but you're actually not. There's a lot of stuff that shouldn't be in there from a health perspective. How do you solve that?
So yeah, definitely. I think that the trend is definitely meat alternatives are everywhere in today's world. If you look at the shelf grows exponentially at the moment, right? So I would classify, there's the traditional stuff, the tofu, the tempeh in some cases, and then there's really all the new stuff that is harmful. I don't want to come off too strong, but there's definitely a very long ingredient list, or there's a fairly heavy processing that goes into creating this. So our model was really to follow a more natural biological route, and that's where the fermentation, which is our key process, so this fungal fermentation comes in and really does a lot of the work for us.
And how does that exactly work?
So how does it work? At the end, fermentation is a very cloudy, hazy word for, I guess, most people. At the end of the day, we consume a lot of fermented food, beer, bread, right? What makes it kick what makes it really work is the fermentation behind it. And the same goes for Luya. So we start off with a mass that's a grainy particulate mass. So it's really this press cake that comes from the soy industry. So the pulp of the soybean after pressing, as well as chickpeas to add some more protein and flavor compounds. And then it goes into a fermentation chamber, and that's where this mushroom does its magic. So it grows over a period of 24 hours, and it really completely transforms the mass. It transforms it on a texture basis. So you go from this kind of pasty, gritty mass to something that's elastic and has a bite resistance. It has a juicy texture at the end. It transforms it on a taste basis. You can really feel a taste. It releases all those notes that come from breaking down the whole material of the soybean and the chickpea, and it also transforms it in terms of bioavailability. Right? And that's what gives it also a nice profile.
Please talk a bit more about that profile, because that's super interesting from people who want to get into a bit more details.
Yeah, I think there's definitely the nutritional aspect that also was super interesting for us. Also using these side streams such as okara, which at the end is really this press cake. So it contains everything that's not soluble. So that's a large fiber fraction. There's still some insoluble protein in there. There's a bit of leftover sugars, and a bit of fats, right? But the fiber is definitely one aspect that I find super interesting. It's something that, it's a bit undervalued, because I think everybody goes for protein. While if you look at our eating habits, actually fiber would be much more important to push. On the protein side, right, Luya is not a protein heavy product, but it contains some protein and it contains what you need, and it also contains a very full amino acid profile, so everything you need. And then there is always this bioavailability topic that is, from a researcher standpoint, super interesting, but very difficult to research. So there is no proof, but the general consensus in literature, of course, is that, fermented foods are foods that have been pre-digested in a way and really increase bioavailability of all these compounds. So at the end, it has a super low calorific content, also of course to the fibers, and you have still a satiating feeling of a food, and it's very healthy at the end for us to eat.
That sounds almost too perfect to be true. It's like low calorie and high nutritional value. I mean, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think that's also part of what really pushed us to do this project. This is such a nice way to really round off the food, all the mismatches we have in our food system, right? So there's really the land use that we have. There's the protein consumption, the healthy consumption, and that was that really rounds it off and was what pushed us to go on this mission.
Yeah. You also mentioned chickpeas and soybeans as part of your ingredients. Where do you actually grow them? Can you grow them here in Switzerland?
So let's start with the soybean, which is the main ingredient, right? So basically, we're not using entire soybeans. We're just using this pulp. So that's actually what we collect this, right? We don't produce tofu or soy milk, so we can actually source this from tofu or soy milk manufacturers in Switzerland. Yep. Most of them, in turn, source their soybeans either from Switzerland or the surrounding country, and most of this is northern Italy, which supplies the soybeans. Yeah. From the chickpea side, it's a similar situation. We source some chickpeas in Switzerland, or there are sources of chickpea in Switzerland, but chickpea doesn't grow ideally in Switzerland, right? It has a low yield, or much lower than other legumes that you can grow, and it definitely also is very sensitive. So if we have a year like last year where it's super wet and cold, there is no chickpeas.
You talked about the fermentation process, a really important part to make your product the way it is, obviously. This process that you created there is also patented. So I wonder, how important is the patent for you, not only from a manufacturing, but also from a business aspect?
So yeah, I think that's definitely an interesting kind of point. I think as researchers and as startuppers, you develop a process to produce something, and you're very worried, right? Like if this becomes a success, right? I mean, a big company can start doing the same, and they can just steamroll us into, because they can put a marketing budget that's horrendous behind it. So you think of how do we protect a bit? I mean, it's one part is you also want to share it with the world, but you also don't want to get into this situation where somebody can just push you out of something you created. That's definitely one aspect to it, and then the other aspect is definitely also that worry translates to investors that have the same worry. So, well, what makes you special, and why can only you do this process? So that's definitely one part where the patent helps, but filing a patent, filing it, in all the major markets of the world for it really to be meaningful is definitely also a double-edged sword, right? It's a lot of cost associated with the patent. It's a lot of effort that goes into it. It needs a lot of careful consideration. So I think for us, it was definitely a good thing to do this patent. But it's definitely also a difficult task, and it causes some sleepless nights to do all of this, and there's a good expense that comes with it.
Absolutely, I can imagine. Looking back, would you do that again? Would you go for a patent again? Or do you think, well, it was an interesting learning, but it's basically not worth the effort looking back?
Well, maybe if I could back with the knowledge I had now in what you need to consider writing a patent, I would maybe do it again. Yeah. I think right at the end you file something, and you can change something, but you can't change everything. So it's definitely, I think, something that's worth doing if you have a process that you can patent and makes sense to patent. If you have to build a patent that's maybe not ideal, and then you have to fight a lot to actually get it through all the authorities, and you don't end up with a significant gain out of that, it's definitely a careful consideration that has to be made.
Got it. Another thing I want to talk about is you've recently received the Bio-Knospe label, which is an amazing achievement because it's not that easy to receive that. So BioSwiss awarded you with that for your sustainability efforts. And I wonder if you could walk us a bit more about the process on what you needed to do to get there and why it's so important to you to have that label.
Yeah, I think it was definitely one label that we thought or put a lot of effort into getting. I think BioSwiss is definitely one of the tougher bio labels that you can get, or the standards are of course very, very rigorous. It has, at the end of the day, it's a price point that's attached to it because the sourcing of raw materials, it's just your selection gets a bit smaller and there's a price to pay. So getting the bio label definitely forced us to rethink our process, or we looked at our process in careful consideration. You know, what do we really need in there? What don't we need in there? The things that we really need, can we replace it with something that is really natural and organic? And that's a nice process to do. And at the end of the day, it's definitely also something that gives us a certain USP. If you look at today's meat alternative market, as we said, it's very big, it's very much growing, and due to all the additives that are in a lot of these products or the complicated processes they do, the bio label is unattainable, and that's of course then a USP that you can put on your packaging. So that was definitely also why it's worth the effort for us.
There's also a big business value behind that.
There is a big business value. It's, as I said, there is a significant markup, so it's a careful consideration whether people will actually pay for this markup or if it's worth it or not. In the retail sector, I definitely think it's a nice thing to have.
And talking about that, retailers and in general your customers, who actually are your customers? Because you seem to serve both, right? You seem to do B2B sales, but you also, of course, in the end have the end consumer using and consuming your product.
Yeah, of course. So talking about customers, we definitely have the retail side. So there, the customer is a very clear end consumer who wants to cook a nice, delicious meal, you know, who maybe wants to cook a nice, delicious meal and not have a bad conscience or feel bad, but also doesn't want complexity, doesn't want products that he doesn't know how to use, are complicated to use, have a weird taste or texture that you maybe don't like. So at the end of the day, what do you want? You want to, come home after a stressful day of work, be able to whip up a nice, delicious meal that feel good. So that really is who we're targeting here. Yeah. On a gastro side, it's a bit a similar situation. There you have a lot of chefs, that they are starting to play with all these new ingredients that are coming out. It's not always easy, but you want an ingredient that really gives you freedom, that is a bit of a blank canvas that you can play with, and that's where Luya has been able to convince a lot of chefs, and that was definitely a nice feedback also for us. It works well with different cooking style. It works well with different marinades. It sucks up the marinades. It kind of carries flavors. So that was definitely kind of the people we are aiming at there, the people that want to create some really new and cool concepts, not necessarily relying on really replacing one-to-one meat in their dish, but maybe, you need to fill that component that's missing. Yeah. And that's where Luya offers an additional choice.
Is that sometimes a difficult balance to have, between the gastro market, the retailers, and also in the end, the end consumer, because they sometimes have different needs or different feedbacks and probably also need different approaches on how to win them as clients?
Yeah, it's definitely two completely separated market. At the end, we have a base product that we produce that works, that we like, and then it's fine-tuned for the specific needs of these two markets, whereas we sell marinated. Now, since last week in Migros, there's also a non-marinated, because it was also interesting to us and important to show, our product. We're not hiding anything with the marinade. It's just a convenience factor that most people like, or that we know a lot of people like. In the gastro sector, it's definitely different. The gastronomers are looking for this blank canvas, that is ready to do something with. Yeah. So there, the product looks slightly different, definitely unmarinated. Shape-wise, we can really look at what they need.
Yeah. But it's still important for you that you can serve both segments at the same time, right?
Yes, it's definitely, I think it also helps to serve both segments at the same time. I think, I always thought if you buy something new in Coop and you don't, maybe, it's new, you don't cook it well, you don't like it, you think, oh, this is bad. If you go to the restaurant, there we could work more with the chefs. You have a skilled person operating. So if you have a great experience in a restaurant, tasting Luya, then you're more likely to go out and buy it, of course, and that's really, there are multiplicators, right? You really can enter or have a lot of tasting opportunities. People that might not buy it in the shelf because it's not their thing, taste it in a restaurant and are convinced.
Perfect. And you are available in both Migros and Coop, so the biggest retailers here in Switzerland. You have them covered. How did you actually get in there? How difficult was it to get in there with your new innovative product?
So I think, to be fair, it was definitely difficult. The convincing part, I would say, was also difficult, but it wasn't crazy. I think we're lucky, right? The sector is, even though it's expanding, I think our two giants that we have, they both want to be at the forefront of this innovation, and I think they're looking closely at what the other is doing, and they're definitely both wanting to be the faster one. So there was some, they were open to new things. You have to be fast, and they know. So that was definitely, of course not easy, but they were open to talking to us. They were open to trying products, seeing what and improving and bouncing this back and forth. The next difficult task is then supplying.
Exactly.
So in 2021 we started. We were 4 people when we started, and at the end of 2021 we were maybe 5 or 6, and we'd already agreed to deliver to Coop. And so actually fulfilling that became quite the task. It's food, right? There's a lot of legislative hurdles. You need specifications, you need the packaging that complies, you need partners for logistics, for everything, and you actually need to build up a factory, which we didn't even have at that point. So that was just definitely a very sporty, ambitious goal, and I think I'm very happy that we managed to get all this produced just in time.
And I mean, that challenge will not get smaller, right? Because at the moment, I think your patties are still made by hand, and that is a big challenge that you need to solve from a factory standpoint to also be able to ramp up the production as you grow to more markets and more clients.
Yeah, definitely. So we really started with this process in the lab, and we scaled it to, well, what at that point looked, from our standpoint, of course, is a factory. I think from an industrial standpoint, this is a pilot, and it's a handmade process at the moment. There's a lot of processes that we haven't been able to automate and bring on a production line, and that's definitely the next step. Is that we're also currently working on, and first machines are arriving. This is also super interesting for us, right? To really push this product and really get a throughput and reduce the workload that is needed to produce, because to be a competitive product in the market, that's definitely also essential.
Absolutely. So this transition from grams to tons is also essential, I assume, to stay competitive on a price level in the market. Is that something that you also aim for, to then be able, through higher production volumes, to lower the price, or to increase your margin, or both at the same time?
Yeah, I think it's both at the same time. We definitely start with a product that's it's not easy to produce. I mean, we start off with very simple ingredients, but it's as we said, it's a long and tedious process. It's a long fermentation, so that the capacity has to match. It's very handmade at the moment. So by really bringing this into an industrial scale where we have automation and really a flow of goods on a line, that really, of course, brings down the cost base here in Switzerland. You can imagine, right? The personnel side is a huge cost, and being able to really ramp up the production without having to ramp up the personnel like crazy is then when it becomes when the margins start becoming interesting.
Absolutely.
Or even doable.
Exactly. If you look back to your journey until today, it's really impressive how you were able to attract and also win the right supporters for Luya at the right time. Now, starting as an FH, a Fachhochschul project, so research-based, I think you first went through the Gebert Ruef's first Ventures program. So I want to quickly, talk about the different stages and initiatives to give people a bit of better overview about what is out there that can actually help them to kickstart their idea. So what was this first program, this first Ventures program that you went through?
So yeah, exactly. First Ventures is from the Gebert Ruef Stiftung, so a foundation that really aims to push, scientific results or projects especially out of the FH, which is First Ventures, really focused on Fachhochschule, to really push this and give these people a chance to take a project, that is currently a research project, and really finance them to push it, to build a business case around it, and to give them a chance at making it something. I think it's really this initial hurdle. And that's, of course, super valuable, because without this, you're lost in the sands, because it's a nice project, but who's gonna finance and push it? So that's where First Ventures, and then of course complementing by the Fachhochschule itself, that was super supportive of us, and the lab space, the office space is all needed. So I think those two were crucial to really get us going and allow us to really, the seed to sprout.
I mean, you're the perfect role model for that. It worked. You've proven that these programs work and are successful.
Yeah, I would say it worked. Sounds like it's a done deal. That's it's worked so far. No, and I think it was, of course, it's definitely a nice story to be able to tell, that we've been able, to take all these small steps and all the little add-ons that are along the way, and really do step-by-step grow this business from a research idea to a pilot to an MVP to then really a production, small scale, and then scaling this up.
Exactly. And then the next step for you was to participate in Venture Kick, which is also supported by the Gebert Ruef Stiftung. What did you do there? Why was that the right initiative to get support from?
I think the Venture Kick, right? It's two things, and it gives you funding step by step on the one side, but it also forces you to really go over your business plan, to pitch again and again your idea, and really to sharpen your idea. So that it also helped us develop the whole story or the business case around Luya.
And then you also found the first investors. You were funded by Red Alpine. Why was that then the right next step for you?
Yeah, I think at the end of our Gebert Ruef and Venture Kick money, let's say, we had an idea of what we wanted to produce. We had the first customers that were interested in it, and then that's the next step, right? You need now build up a marketing behind it. You need to build, of course, the factory behind it. You need to hire the people to operate and run all of this. So at that's when the capex start appearing. So definitely the seed round was what we needed. So a more significant chunk of money that lets you really start to develop something and build.
Absolutely. And then you went back to Gebert Ruef. There was another initiative, the InnoBooster. You received a grant of 150,000 Swiss francs, again from Gebert Ruef Foundation. Why was that then the right step to take that money instead of going for another VC round, basically?
So I think it's not never an either or question, luckily. Right. So I think the next Gebert Ruef money that we got was maybe also more forward looking. It was really, so the project that we entered there was also really looking at, okay, what we have now, the VC money we have now is really aimed at building this new factory and producing at this, let's say, with this technology that we've looked at now, and while the Gebert Ruef was a bit more forward-looking in terms of, what comes next, what comes after that is really how do we scale this technology to an industrial standard, or to really meet an industrial production. Yeah. And so that is a slight sidetrack that's, of course, crucial to push Luya to a next level, and will allow us in a way then to also do the next financing round. So we've really piloted it, and we've defined what we want to do, and now we're looking for the next, or starting to look for the next financing round to look, okay, and how do we finance this? So that's the next step then.
Amazing. And how did that selection process look like? Like, did you have to do some pitching or to hand in some documents, some material to actually get selected as an InnoBooster?
Yeah, so for the InnoBooster, there's let's say an application dossier that you need to put together. So there's some supporting documents, but mainly really revolves around your idea. What do you want to do? How does this have an impact? How do you want to spend your money? And all of this. That's a first selection round. And from this, then you're selected to of course pitch. And that's the two big steps for the InnoBooster. So really putting together a good document of laying out a nice project, and then of course pitching it, answering the questions of a jury to scrutinize your business ideas.
And luckily you already had a lot of pitching experience from before that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a pitching experience is definitely something you gain along this track.
Definitely. And, of course, we now heard the financial aspect, to support you with funds, with grants. In what other ways has the Gebert Rüff Stiftung supported you along the way?
Yeah, I think the Gebert Rüff Foundation has left and right supported us, through chats with the people, through really, regular reporting. What do we do? It forces you to also think about, where are we in our processes? What do we need to do? As well as the pitching and all of these, also there, the business case, sharpening your project, right? It's I think if you just have money and you can spend it however, right? It forces you, right? It forces you to really look at what you're doing and make it count.
Absolutely. And if you zoom out and look a bit on the ecosystem, right? You have the universities, you have the investors, you have the startups. What is sort of the role of a Stiftung like Gebert Rüff? What is the role and the importance of Gebert Rüff in the ecosystem?
I think it's really this step between the idea and the first equity seed round. There's still a lot of work to do, let's say. There's a gap. So if you finish the project at the Fachhochschule or at the university, quite often it's too early to go into an investor discussion. You don't have an MVP. You have not thought this through. So it really, I think, it really gives this time, or it's this critical step of developing an MVP, developing a business case around your research project that you then can go for the next step. So I think it's a very crucial step. This first, where maybe basically there are too many projects or too risky for investors to invest in everybody. So it really is an environment of fostering ideas where they can still grow, and then apply and giving those people a chance to apply for funding.
And I think that's beautiful what you just said. It's basically pushing ideas to a level where then professional investors or whoever, clients, would take care of them and the business can thrive. But to push the right projects that might otherwise never see the light of the day, to push them forward and through, that's an important part.
I think it's definitely a very enabling part, right? They play the enabling role of really allowing people to further their research, past what you do in a master thesis, where you really just can focus on. It allows you to focus on your project, right? You're financed, you're paid. You can really completely focus on this project and push it.
I mean, imagine there's so much good research, good ideas, good technology out there that just doesn't get commercialized or build a business around it. That's such a waste of innovation and potential.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, Luya is up and coming as a food tech startup, growing, winning new clients, new retailers as distributors, etc. You have a really good start, a really good track record already. What is next for you? What are the next milestones?
Yeah, I think it sounds, we've come a long way, but it sounds like we're almost there. The way you describe it, I think there's still a very long way to go, right? So as I've described, really scaling out this technology, making it, bringing this to an industrial scale where the process is actually relevant. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, developing all the markets that there are still to uncover. Luya is a super versatile product. So there's still so many markets that we could develop in. I think there's still a ton of ideas behind, using the technological platform that we're using, which is the solid state fermentation of side stream. There's a huge array of things to play with. So I think there's definitely a lot to come.
I love that. Although you've already come a long way, you still feel like a bit like it's day one. There's so much more potential and stuff to do around there.
Yeah, I think if you want to, it's always day one, right?
I love that. So Toby, to wrap up the conversation of today, we have some rapid fire questions for you. I either give you a short question or different options to choose from, and you have to answer in one sentence. You ready?
Let's go.
Why did you actually start a company as opposed to not starting it?
I think because it's just this beautiful big challenge and it forces you to learn a lot. So you have to get on the fast track.
Steep learning curve.
Definitely.
What was the best lesson entrepreneurship has taught you so far?
The best, I think it's taught me a lot about, exactly this, learning, prioritizing your tasks and what maybe you can't do everything, right? So really prioritizing well and pushing the things that need to be pushed across the line.
Amazing. Do you have any career regrets?
No, none. I think I'm quite happy with how everything has gone. So it would be, I would be wrong to say yes.
How often do you feel the urge to move on to something new or something different?
It's a good one. I would say probably daily, because there's just so many cool things to do out there. But I come back to, to the factory, the team, the project, and it inspires me to, of course, stay on track with this one.
Nice. And the last one for you today, what are you not willing to give up?
It's, maybe a bit cheesy, but I would say the dreaming, right? To just keep having ambitions that seem a bit crazy, but just push for it.
I think we could definitely need more of that thinking and dreaming in Switzerland.
Yeah, I think it's just also a very nice thing to do, and you can achieve much more than you think.
Exactly. Toby, thank you so much for coming on the show. Lots of success and all the best for the future. And I'm sure we're going to hear, read and see much more of you in Luya.
Well, thank you, Silvan, for having me, and thanks for the nice conversation.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, you can support us by rating our show on Apple Podcasts. This way, we can reach an ever-growing number of aspiring entrepreneurs.